All right. Well, Roxana, I obviously, as we said just before getting on this recording, very much appreciate you spending the time. So let's just launch right into it. I just wonder if you can briefly summarize who you are and what you do.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Tracy. And my name's Roxana Radulescu. So if you can tell by the last name, that's a originally Romanian name. A first tip I can give you is any name ending in Escu. That's a sign that's a Romanian name. And so I'm from Bucharest, Romania originally. My corporate background is learning and development in international law firms. I used to head the learning and development department globally for about 8 years, up until we decided to move continents and we moved over to Canada. I'm actually joining you from Toronto today. And right now, I'm an independent coach and workshop facilitator as well. I also teach at one of the colleges here in Toronto, and I focus on helping mid-career professionals develop their people and leadership skills. And I also do individual and team coaching, so helping teams work together more effectively. That's my focus these days.
That's I appreciate the background, and again, appreciate the time. So we talked about the class is all about executive presence, and I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, you had to summarize what this term executive presence means. How would you describe it?
That's, to me, that's the impact that we have when we connect with other people, and how much of the impact that we want to make is felt by the people that we connect with. And what I mean, there's a term that a technical term, and that's called the perception gap. And it's like, when I want to be perceived in a specific way, and what is the other person's experience in how they perceive me, and is that closer to what I want them to experience of me, or is that gap widened? So the closer it is, I think the better executive presence we have, because that to me is when our intentions are aligned to how we express that communication, and in a way that is received similarly by the other person and not interpreted too much or too far-fetched. That's what executive presence is to me, not necessarily related to the hierarchy, rather to how I want to be perceived, how I feel that I'm perceived, and what's the other person's experience of me.
Okay. So if ask you, think about someone who you think has executive presence. How would you describe them?
As you say that,
and the power that they have.
I think that's a great question, because I have three people that I immediately thought of when you asked that. One of them is Maya Angelou, and the other one is Richard Branson, and the other one is former President Obama. And they're very different styles to be in terms of executive presence, but their presence is pretty much unforgettable, differently kind of unforgettable. But I think we can all get a sense of what they want to express and how they want to be remembered, just looking at their different styles of displaying that executive presence. To me,
so let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So how do you put them all in the same bucket if they express it differently? What do they have in common even though the ingredients to get there are different.
So to me, it's the impact. It's that
Hmm.
impact that they've had on me, and how I am still able to remember things that they said and how they said them.
Hmm.
That and I think I will always remember those. And they also had an influence on how I developed my own executive presence and how I connected to different things from their different styles. So I think I cherry picked a few
Hmm.
things from all of them because those things resonated a lot with me. But it's that memorable part of how they say what they say, how they do what they do, that I cannot mimic exactly, but it stays with me. And I wouldn't dare to, I wouldn't want to, but it stayed with me and it really made such a huge impact on me. And it's like they could create those memorable bits and pieces. Yeah.
So, for example, what did you cherry pick?
Um, I picked so from Maya Angelou, I picked, and I hope I'm getting better at that. Uh, the way in which she was able to concentrate a very deep message in very few words that were extremely meaningful and very well picked. And she was so articulate and also so poetic. Everything she was saying was like storytelling one on one every single time. And it was so deep. And she was also speaking from experience, which is incredible. But just to be able to share that experience in nudges of wisdom, so well articulated. So that is one. uh, I think from Richard Branson, it's the ease and the sense of fun and playfulness. Like it's and which almost makes things very easy to think about doing. It just doesn't have that sense of, oh, it's impossible. You look at everything this guy did, and it just suddenly looks very possible and very natural, and maybe I can give it a try. that kind of that kind of sense, like not taking yourself too seriously. Yes, do things in all seriousness, but also experiment and have fun with that. And Obama is, for me, he's such a graceful communicator, and he uses the way in which he uses his body language to support his message, the way in which you can feel the empathy that he brings into the conversation, even if it's a speech. But it's what he doesn't say, or when he pauses, or the when he speaks faster, low, slower, um, how he makes eye contact, how he smiles. He's not one of those politicians who's not afraid to smile. And I think he has that grace and elegance that I appreciate a lot. So I think these would be the elements that I throw in the same bucket from these three people.
You described each of those really well. And if you're able to roll those all together, that's an awesome combination.
Yeah, well, striving to.
Um, so is executive presence important in your own role?
Yeah, it's I find that it's regardless of the role that I had uh across the years, because I changed roles, but I think executive presence is pretty pretty personal because it's related to your professional brand. Like, how do you want people to remember you? What do you want them to say about you when you're not there? And I think that is part of in a way, that's part of the legacy that we leave.
Hmm.
One way or another, we don't have to be leading companies or I don't know, empires, or it's just what's my impact on the world around me? How do I want these people to experience me, to remember me? Because that also comes back like a, not like a boomerang, but I can I can feel it in how we communicate, in how we interact, in how we work together. And also at home, it's pretty much the same thing for me. It's how does my family experience me? Am I really completely different from what people experience at work? What's different about me? What am I allowing, what I'm bringing in one space that I'm not bringing in another, and vice versa? So I think it's presence. I mean, executive or not, that's our, we decide what 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 the level of our presence is. But I think presence, if I want to, at least for me, if I want to experience life fully, I want to be present fully. So that's why it's important for me.
Okay. Well, so you mentioned that you're, and of course I know that you're both a coach and a teacher. And so how is presence important in each of those functions?
Um, it's important in how I set the stage at the beginning of that relationship, for example. How we're starting to have a conversation, how we're starting to trust each other, especially at the beginning of the relationship, but all throughout the coaching or the workshops or the learning program, whatever it is, and how long it is for. It's helping me connect, helping me understand the other person, helping me be a better listener, helping me bring the right resources or ask the right questions at the right time, helping me help people feel that they are included in the conversation and engage them in the conversation. And unless I decide I need to be present, and so I need to leave distractions off as much as I can, really want to hear from them, pausing again, asking questions and allow people to actually take their time to think about the questions and then provide answers, being curious about what they have to say and how they experience that coaching session or that workshop. Those are elements that I need to intentionally bring in those sessions. And I've learned that in time, because I wasn't always good at it, and I'm still learning. I think we're still in the learning process anyway. But I find that these were important elements of presence that I can bring into those conversations.
That's a good segue to the question about, well, how did you develop it for yourself? You mentioned that it's something you've been working on. So did you show up with much executive presence naturally? Is it something that you've worked on much?
Worked on a lot, because I used to be very, very shy to the point of being labeled antisocial as a child. So I wasn't communicating much. I wasn't necessarily connecting with a lot of people, a lot of kids, or making a lot of friends. And then as I grew up, I started to crave, in a way, to be a better communicator so that I can make friends, so that I don't feel that isolated. So I guess it was that lack of social skills that I had that, pushed me to want to develop something that I could see other kids or teenagers do pretty well, and that I wasn't really good at. Um, And one of the things that helped me was watching MTV. I know this sounds very random, but it was where I learned presentation skills and public speaking from all of those VJs on MTV that were presenting shows. And I started to dream that I would be one of them when I grow up. Didn't end up like that, but I did learn that there's a certain way in which you can speak so that it's engaging and interesting for people to just stay with you, even if there's no direct interaction, but make them feel interested and engaged. So for me, I always wanted to be a teacher in a way. I didn't end up doing that at the beginning of my career. I ended up working in law firms where, funnily enough, I was sort of a teacher because I was doing IT training initially, and then I went into the learning and development world and started to create workshops and programs for the people working there. But that's where it was that practice that helped me, because now I loved putting together the program or the workshop or whatever it was, and now I had to deliver it. And because I was the one that put it together, I was excited about it. So I just had to work on the actual delivery, which was no easy feat for me because I was still very much introverted. But I found that was a power, because being an introvert meant that if I was passionate about the topic and I knew my topic, I could actually deliver it, and in a way that made sense to people. So, but it was not until I started doing it that I started to build my confidence. And this is where I find that, and that's been my go-to whenever I was supposed to get involved in something new or delivered at a larger scale to a larger audience. I knew I had to be prepared. I knew I had to know my topic. And the minute I felt I was prepared, I was able to do it. But I would just dive right in and I say, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then I would prepare to do it. And because I needed the practice and I knew the practice helped me. So that's how I learned. I put myself in situations where I could do a presentation for the entire office, or I would go and talk to, and then I would go and talk to the board of directors, or I would just put myself in those situations, just raise my hand and then prepare for that and just do it.
Got it. So you had a sort of a forcing function. Like,
Yeah.
I want to learn. I'm just going to sign up for a bunch of stuff that will force me to get lots and lots of practice.
Yeah, exactly.
When you are facing some daunting situation now, where it's important to have executive presence, are there any tips or tricks that you use above and beyond knowing your stuff? Whether it is stories you tell yourself, or mantras you might have, or dyeing your hair blue, or what's the combination of things that you might use now to help pull together the whole executive presence presentation that you'd like to have?
Yeah, it's you're reminding me of what I did, and actually knowing that I have blue hair, that's one of the things that helps me. Because it just takes my mind off of anything that it's just something random that I think about, and it's just, I know that, hey, people will remember you because you have blue hair. So that for me makes it a little bit lighter. But you reminded me, before I did I did a TEDx talk, because I said, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I did a TEDx talk? So I applied And then when they said, okay, come on over and give your talk. And then I was, you know, punched by the reality of it. Oh, so now I really have to prepare something for my TEDx talk. But and here are the things that I did the night before were, as you said, so rehearsing that talk. And I actually rehearsed it. I remember there was a lamp in the hotel room, a bedside lamp, and I put it in front of me so that the light would hit my eyes directly, because during our rehearsal on stage, all of those bright lights were on us. So, and I was blinded by the light, and I remember that I went completely blank. I no longer knew what I was supposed to say. So that's how I rehearsed in my hotel room with the light hitting my eyes. So that was one. And I rehearsed as if I was actually talking to the audience. I didn't whisper it. I didn't stop it. I didn't go back until I was finished with what I had to say. And then I was tweaking and reviewing and making it work. And what I also did the day of is I never went through anything that I wanted to say anymore. I did some power poses as I woke up. And one of my favorites is either clapping or doing this, the winner's power pose. I walked all the way to the venue listening to music. And I specifically remember what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's what I kept listening on the way to my venue. And then when I was there, as I was listening to the other speaker before me, what also helped me was just move around and just realize, just take it all in. I wasn't thinking about what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it anymore, but just take it all in and wanting to have a good experience out of that and make it a good experience for me and for everybody else. And and as I got on the stage, the presenter introduced me dancing her way through. Here's Roxana. And I was sort of almost dancing, not really, because I was a little bit frozen, to be honest, during those first couple of seconds, but it really helped. So for me, movement and music and just getting my mind off things and just thinking I want to make it a great experience for me and for other people. And I do that before important presentations that I have right now. I kind of have the same routine that I'm using.
That's a good routine.
I like that. It works for me. So whatever works for you, find that thing that works for you. That would be, because it's not the same for everybody, but this is what I find work for me.
When people talk to you about their desire to develop their own executive presence, what advice do you provide to them?
So first of all, it would be, I would start with your first question. When you think about executive presence, what are you thinking about? And maybe even who are you thinking about? Because I think we need some role models. I mean, we don't live in complete isolation. And I think with a role model, you can learn what is it that most resonates with you from what other people are doing that you think would come naturally to you and that you would love to do or learn how to do, because that's what you would want people's experience to be about you and with you, because you feel that's something that you have in common with those role models that you're looking up to. And then put yourself, like, once you have figured it out. Okay, this is what I have. This is what resonates with me. This is what I could use more of. This is what I can learn more of. Do it, practice it. It's part of the regular practice. And for me, it was just putting myself and putting my hand up to put myself in those situations where I could practice it. And you can like, or start small and think about it. Okay, if I need to do to improve my public speaking skills, for example, well, what are some situations where I do speak in public, even if it's just a few people? It doesn't have to be a whole room of people, but just treat it as, hey, right now I'm in this role of a public speaker, and just become the public speaker and just practice being that public speaker. How do you walk? How do you talk? How do you make eye contact as a public speaker? You're taking a different, you're taking on your different persona as a public speaker. So I think that's it's the practice, really. You have to not wait for other people to give you the opportunity, but just create that environment where you can practice that skill over and over.
When you talked about, hey, so it's adopt that persona of a public speaker. And I realize I'm asking you a big question. And I'm going to ask you to cheat and say, well, here's two things in each of these categories. If you think and say about the persona of a public speaker from an appearance perspective and a communications perspective, what are a couple of tips that you might provide in each of those categories?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I see what you said. It's a big question. So appearance, by appearance, do you mean how they use the body language to support their message, or is there more to it?
I guess it could be the way you dye your hair. It could be the way you dress. It could be the way the posture. It could be, as you say, how you move. I don't know. It's not clear. Are there just a few topics, concepts that you have there? Mm-hmm.
So and I will say this, and I started doing that ever since I was back in my corporate days. I remember our corporate color was orange. And whenever I had presentations or workshops in other offices, not in my home office, which was Bucharest, but I was traveling a lot to deliver different kinds of programs, I would wear something orange or combination of orange, white, and black, because those were the official corporate colors. Because I felt it gave me more, I felt more aligned, more integrated, more part of that office, even though I didn't know those people well enough or didn't know me. But I was telling them we're part of the same team.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. How do you
I used to do that.
Connected to them as quickly as possible, right? There via their first impression.
Yeah, I'm one of you. We work in the same
That's firm. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that helped me. And this is one of the reasons why my hair turned blue now, is because one of my brand colors is blue. And I like that, and it so happened that it turned out this way. So this was a nice accident, but I like how it goes because I'm on brand pretty much all the time. So it really helps. And the way, and I find that, so that's one thing. And one of the examples that I love giving is Steve Jobs' presentation of when they launched the iPhone. And not just the body language, but the way he was dressed. So everything he was wearing were like, he was wearing a black top with blue jeans and white sneakers. All of his slides in that presentation had the same kind of colors, and the whole stage had those same colors, because yeah, he didn't want the spotlight to be on him, but on the product, on what they were actually launching. So he was one with the background. He wasn't standing out in any way. Everything was on brand, and the spotlight was on the product. So it's thinking about, what's my message? What's the purpose? What do I want people to focus on? And how much do they need to be focused on me? How much do I need to impress them at the beginning? But then I want to switch their attention to something else, to my message, and I want to leave them with something. So it's we're a very powerful visual, and not just the body language, but our appearance as well. So incorporating some of those elements in order for them to support the message rather than distract attention from the message, and make you feel comfortable and good about it. And that's important. So just that's what I'm balancing out when I think about it. And I know there was a second part to your question, but
the other massive question that I'm asking you to be concise in your answer about, which is there. But anyway, and tips regarding communication. So you mentioned, for example, how you admired how Obama had pauses, or you admired how Maya Angelou was able to say something very powerful in a very direct, concise, and poetic fashion.
Well, I think for communication, the clearer we are, the more effective the communication is. And I know that sounds simple, and communication is so complex. We know it's more complex than that. So what I appreciate in communication is the responsibility that we take as senders of that communication, and as receiver of that communication. These are very important roles in any communication process, because as a sender, it's my responsibility to send the message out over you in a very clear, helpful way. Maybe concise, maybe clear, but it also means that I'm not gonna withhold information from you that might be important for you to know about, so that you can then move further or take the next steps or do your job. So that's my responsibility as a sender, not just send the message out because, okay, I'm done, I'm out of here, you do whatever you want. So that's my sender responsibility. As a receiver, I also have a responsibility to really receive that message and not fake it. And a lot of the times we do just nod and we pretend that we heard the message, but we didn't really, or we might pretend that we understood it fully, but we didn't really. So, taking my responsibility as a receiver, and when I don't understand something, just ask for more details, or making sure that I send some feedback to the person talking to me and say, hey, this is what I understand. Is this right? Was there more to it? Just clarifying. Or sometimes we assume that we understood what the other person said, and surprise, surprise, a lot of the times we actually don't. And because we interpret whatever message we receive in our own way and on our own values and beliefs and experiences. But that doesn't mean that this is exactly what the other person meant. So making sure that it's a two-way street, not just a monologue,
Mhm.
and not just a passive approach where, I'm just here to listen, but I'm not going to ask for the information that you didn't tell me. Maybe you forgot, but I'm not going to ask about it. And then I will have an excuse and I will say, well, you didn't tell me that.
How do you make it sure it's a two-way street?
Well, you ask the question, or you let the other person know, hey, this is what I heard. Is this what you meant? And sometimes it just takes a few clarifying questions or a little summary of what I just heard from you and what I understood from what you said. That gives you a chance to say, yes, that's exactly it. Or, oh, no, wait a minute. Actually, what I meant was that. Or, oh, and I might have forgotten to mention this other thing that might be important. Yeah, this is what I find is really helpful.
Uh, what else should I ask you? Or should I ask you anything else? You've been really thoughtful and really thorough, and much more thoughtful than I would have been.
But you asked really good questions. I mean, those were making
Those
me
are,
on my feet.
that's right. Those are hard questions in the moment, and you did a really nice job.
But see, I think this is an example of what the practice benefits you. Because I've been putting myself in situations where I would be interviewed.
Yeah.
And I don't always get questions in advance. But I guess, for to the purpose of this particular dialogue, I think this is a good example of how that practice helped me think on my feet.
Well, you're welcome.
Yes. Well, yes. Thank you. But no, I don't know. I would say maybe one thing that I was also thinking about is communication, how important feedback also is, and not just, this is what I heard, but also making sure that I tell you what I appreciate about about the interaction, about working with you, about what you did on that project, and also telling you what are some things that don't work or that I don't appreciate, so that we can course correct on time, so that frustrations don't pile up, so that we're preventing the conflict before it even gets there, because we have it figured out. I think that's part of making it a constant dialogue and that two-way street as well.
I think actually you're raising a really important point, which is not just giving the feedback, but asking for the feedback, right?
Yeah.
Which is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
It's one thing to put yourself out there. It's another thing to go, okay, well, what'd you think?
Yeah.
And then do it again and again and again and again and again. But yeah, I agree with you. That's actually a great idea. Yeah, you put yourself out there. You practice disappearance. You dye your hair green. You dye your hair blue. You dye your hair green and blue and orange. You speak with a Romanian accent, or you don't. And you communicate in poems or whatever it is, and you figure out what works.
Yep. And I mean, and you might be surprised when you get different feedback from different people. It might surprise you as well. And I think that's another good practice. It's just practice being surprised and curious and surprised, because I think that's it's that thing that we can't control that we're afraid of. That's why I'm not going to ask for feedback because who knows what I'm going to get. Well, if I'm curious about it, it's not going to look so scary. So I think that's a good practice to your point. Well, let's try different colors and see what we get and what works.
Yeah. You're actually inspiring me to reach back out to the class after the first session and ask for feedback, and to prompt them to go out and just sign up for something. The forcing function.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'll use that idea too.
Yeah.
Now that you've mentioned it.
All right. Well, I've spent an hour interviewing you for half an hour.
Well, yeah.
You've been, really thoughtful and really helpful, and really, in addition to giving me some great ideas, like the exercises I was just talking about, thinking about things, and in ways that I hadn't thought about. Like, for example, a couple of things you said as it relates to appearance and the way that you were thoughtful about, hey, I want to do something that allows us to be connected right away, as opposed to whatever, I'm not going to give any thought to this, it's just that. But it's a package, right? Yeah. It's you and that, and you are the wrapping on the package. Or the thought about, no, wait a minute, you want to complement it, you don't want to distract from it. So those are just a couple of good examples.
Yeah. I'm happy that it was inspiring for you as well.
Definitely inspiring. Yeah, definitely inspiring. And so actually, I'm going to probably do something off of my class like tomorrow to push them on some stuff. All right. I'm going to stop recording here.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I can help you with?